May as well kick off. Yeah. We'll get started. There are a couple of elected members who've let us know they're running a little late. Nalakadich wajak mort kan kadak nijawalilat puja, wejinang wajak katajan, wenyiting bula yeah. We acknowledge the Wajak people as the traditional owners of the Greater Fremantle Walilup area, and we recognise their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. In terms of apologies, we have an apology from Councillor Graham. We have Councillor Lang attending online, and Councillors Groom and Pemberton have let me know that they will be here in the next 10 minutes. So we'll proceed with the agenda, and they will join us as soon as they can. Do we have any applications for leaves of absence? Nope, all good. Do we have any disclosures of interest by members? Nope. Councillor Lang, I am trying to look at you when I look around the room, but because you don't have a speaker button or anything, just sort of, wave your arms around if you think that I might have missed you, or turn your microphone on and start speaking. So just thank you. Responses to previous public questions taken on notice are contained in the agenda. So that will bring us to public question time. I have two people listed to speak, Dave Hudson and Peter Merger. I'm trying to get that right. You're going to have to... I did okay. That's awesome. Peter's speaking on PC 230441. So I'll call Peter up first, and then we'll go to Dave. And if there's anyone else in the gallery who had a question, you could perhaps catch Melody before that. So if you just come up to the mic, you've got 3 minutes to speak. I know that's a short time in a planning application. We'll just set a little timer to let you know when that's up. It is being recorded for the purpose of the minutes and broadcast. Thanks. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Peter Merger from Urbanista Town Planning, and I'm here speaking in relation to item PC 2221 and PC 2212-2 for 8 Hickory Street in South Fremantle. I represent the owners of the property, Ian and Yana Belinge, and I'll be speaking in support of the officer recommendation for development approval. There should be an amended set of plans that were potentially circulated to councillors this evening. They're basically an amended version of the plan that is currently in the agenda. I guess I would like to thank Councillor Sullivan for his time over the past 3 weeks in working with us and the officers to achieve what we all consider to be a better outcome for the site and the adjoining property. Just to provide some background, following the committee meeting held on the 5th of April, where I presented in support of the officer recommendation, Councillor Sullivan, I and the owners of the property met on site to discuss the proposal and the potential for making some changes to do 2 primary things. One was to achieve a reduced overshadowing of the adjoining property, which was currently at 29%, and the other one was to improve the appearance of the 3rd level roof form and to look at ways to implement a pitched roof into the design as opposed to the current irregular roof form. What you have with respect to the plans before you is effectively no change to the plan at the ground and the upper floor level. The changes are concentrated to the covered roof area and the open terrace on the 3rd level. The main change involves changing the profile and the form of the roof from an irregular shape to a pitch style. What happens with respect to that is that the wall height of the roof is reduced by 400 mm from 2.4 metres to 2 metres, pitching up in the centre of the 3rd level to allow the sun to penetrate through the adjoining property more effectively, where it was previously restricted by the greater wall height. By making this change, the extent of overshadowing is reduced from approximately 29% to around 27%, much closer to the 25% which is considered deemed compliant. The changes to the form of the roof also aligns more with the character of the area and prevailing style of roof form in the street and the broad area. Whilst the roof pitch is slightly higher than the previous plan, due to its 15-metre setback from the primary street, it will hardly be noticeable from the adjoining property or from the street. The other proposed change is a slight extension to the open roof terrace by approximately 2 metres. This change does not affect the overshadowing or visual privacy provisions as it will be screened. The reason for the increased balcony size is to offset some of the space lost within the third level area due to the lower floor to ceiling heights of 2 metres. In summary, we hope that the council considers the changes made to the since the committee meeting to be positive, for they improve the overshadowing of the adjoining property, and they align more closely with the character of the area in terms of its appearance. Just to close, I would like to thank Councillor Sullivan for his efforts over the last 3 weeks in working with us. He's done a really great job in a very short period of time. Thank you very much, and I hope you support the proposal.
Thank you, and well done keeping it to 3 minutes. Dave Hudson.
Hi, councillors. I'll be pretty quick. My name's David Hudson. I've got La Chiquita Cafe that's in the east end of Fremantle. For those that don't know, the east end of Fremantle is down there. We seem to be a forgotten area of Fremantle. But firstly, I just want to speak about the footbridge to the passenger terminal. I want to know why it's closed. Port Authority owns it. The PTA governs it. Now, I've made numerous calls over the last 6-8 months, emails. They're telling me it's unsafe, but they can't provide any engineering reports on how they tested it was unsafe. I believe it's not unsafe. If you go down there and have a look, it's BHP steel and it's Jarrah with bitumen on it. It'll still be there after a nuclear holocaust. It does not move in a force 10 gale. All the railways infrastructure is still on it. Their power, their earthing, and a lot of dangerous goods move underneath it. If it's so dangerous, it should be removed. I say either remove it, fix it, or come clean on it. Costs a lot of the businesses in the east end of Fremantle a lot of money when that foot traffic doesn't come through. I'm not the only business down there that's making inquiries about it, and they're all. We've got together and we've looked at all the emails and answers, and they're contradicting themselves, the PTA. So I'm asking to the councillor, maybe to the CEO, Glenn Dougal, if you could approach the PTA and find out what's going there. I think that's a fair question. It cost me a lot of money when I used to make quite a bit of money when the cruise ships are in town because they wander through, they want to walk. I go down there now at night time and I spruik. I hand out cards and tell people what's going on, and I get people, they come, but they don't come via the footbridge and they don't come via the shuttle bus. You know, they come because I've physically been there and done some spruiking. But anyway, I think I'm not so sure about that. I think there's some underlying factor there, and I think it reeks. But anyway, I won't go into that. I'd just like some answers. The next one is street festivals and parades in Fremantle. Is the east end of Fremantle not a gazetted Fremantle road? Because we don't get any of that. The only thing we get is the blessing of the fleet, and that's probably only because St Patrick's is there and they haven't got a choice. But your whole street festival that you just had the other week, you had Circus WA, were prominent in that. Why wasn't it done in the east end of Fremantle? You know, that's where they are. That's where they live. We don't get anything, you know. Anzac Parade didn't come down our street. The live, the Live Wire Parade, that's not coming down Adelaide Street. I asked why. They came in to put their posters up, which I didn't want, because probably on that day the businesses down there will have to close because there won't be much happening. It'll be all up in the Cappuccino Strip. I just want to let you know the East End is happening, and as far as that music event, it's done by Tourism WA and not a body that's controlled by Fremantle. It's done by City of Perth or Fringe Festival, whatever it is. There's a lot of good musicians here in Fremantle that could have been on the back of those trucks, and they're not. Some of them are getting 2-minute, 10-minute gigs on some stages around the place. We could have filled all those trucks with good Fremantle musicians. There's a young band, 12 Past X. They should definitely be on one of those. If any of you just want to have a look, go and have a look at Fire in Your Belly on Thursday night. It's a 12 and 14-year-old girl, and they'll be a big thing. Why they're not on the back of a truck, I don't know. What I'm asking is, come for a walk down the east end of Fremantle. I have live music there 5 days a week. I know every muso in Perth just about, and they all play there. Saturday would be a good one, the Duke Joint Band. Bill there set up the Freo Men's Club. He's the head of a blues band. They're a great band, it's great fun. What I'm saying is the businesses down there, is all we want to be is included in some of these festivals.
Cool. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, I ran out of time. And infrastructure.
We're here every month. We'll see you again. But Well, what I might do, I'm going to take both of those as the one about the PTA, and then I think the street festivals more broadly will take it as a comment. In regard to the the footbridge, might go to the Director of Planning because I know there is some work that his team are involved in that the PTA are running around crossings, and I just wanted to check with the Director of Planning whether that footbridge is included in that work that we understand that the PTA are doing. So that's really our only engagement point, I think, in having a say in that one. I can't take comments at council from the gallery, sorry.
Through the Mayor, we understand a crossing point will be looked at as part of that study. We also understand the current footbridge. We're hearing the same arguments that it is past its use by date structurally and it will remain closed, and our understanding is it will ultimately be removed, but the PTA are looking at alternative options between the city and Victoria Quay, but they will be long-term plans.
So that's probably our only engagement with that. Councillor Archibald, sorry, did you?
Just a question. I didn't catch the name of the cafe that was...
La Chiquita.
And where...
Am I getting it right?
It's
just down near the Point Street, the intersection of Point Street and Adelaide Street. So before we start becoming an advertisement for Dave's very good business, we'll leave it there.
Yep.
Thanks. And I think that's all for public question time, unless I can see anything else. Nope. Good-o. Okay, and we'll welcome Councillor Pemberton. Thank you. That's fine. Wild out there. Do we have any petitions? No. Deputations and special deputations and presentations, I'm not aware of any. Confirmation of minutes. Can I get I'll move the confirmation of the minutes from OCM on the 22nd of March. I think we may need to, no, that's planning. We needed to do something with the minutes. We can note it in the planning meeting rather than, yep, okay, good. Can I get a seconder for that? Thanks, Councillor Lorber. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Welcome, Councillor Groom. I think we are now all here. It's been one of those nights. Do we have any elected member communication? Nope. Good-o. For those of you in the gallery, this is probably the shortest meeting agenda I've seen for a while, so I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing for you, but your night won't be terribly long. So we'll go to the committee reports. Planning Committee, I might ask Councillor Jones to introduce the planning item, just to give us a sense of where we are with this one.
Yes, just before moving the item, I just want to point out an error in the minutes, which have not yet been ratified by the Planning Committee, but on page 24, on the printed page 24 of the agenda, it says the item was carried 2-3. It should say it was lost 4-2. Now, I don't know if we need to move that or if that should be noted. Just noted. Okay.
Just noted.
So with that, and I'll just explain the background to this. Well, I'll move the item first. Seconder.
Seconder, Councillor Mofflin.
Just to make it clear, it is quite complicated, although the issue is not difficult, but the background possibly is. So this item first came to the Planning Committee at the 7th of December meeting and was recommended for refusal by the officers because of excessive overshadowing. The committee decided not to accept the refusal, but to refer it back to the administration to allow the applicant to revise the plans. The applicant revised the plans. They came back to the April meeting at the beginning of this month, and the revised plans were supported by the officers and recommended for approval, but the committee didn't agree with that recommendation and it was lost 4-2. Since that was not enough votes to use delegation, it goes to council. In the intervening period, the applicants have put in a third set of plans which reduces the overshadowing slightly, reduces it more, makes it less. So just to be clear, the motion I've moved is for the plans that went to the committee, which the committee wanted to refuse. The plans that have been submitted since are in the additional documents, which may be the subject of an amendment by Councillor Sullivan. I hope that's clear. So what's being moved at the moment is the plans which the committee wants to refuse. The amendment will bring in the plans which are in the additional documents, okay, which I personally would support. So I'll leave it there. So I'll having moved the officer's recommendation.
Yep. Okay, so Councillor Sullivan, you look like you might want to speak.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Jones, I might just get you to turn your microphone off if I can now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the summary has been made quite fairly. I would say at the committee, because I had expressed quite strongly that I felt welcomed the significant reduction in the overshadowing that had been proposed since the December meeting, but felt that it hadn't gone quite as far as they could have taken it. It's not to say that I wasn't accepting of the officer's recommendation that maybe it had got across the line, but I did actually feel that where there is a possibility of improving the overshadowing without compromising the applicant's brief, that every effort should be taken to do that. And the neighbour on the south side had lobbied the council, the committee. Unfortunately, they couldn't come along to committee that night. But I did feel that, given the circumstances of how their property is configured, that every metre of shadow was going to make a difference. And I felt it was personally worth asking the applicant to just go that little bit further. Councillor Jones said that the committee was of the mind to not accept the proposal. I think that was probably reasonably influenced by me suggesting that more work could be done. I note that Councillor Graham and Councillor Groom both supported it. I know that I was very close to agreeing with that position. But that said, it didn't get up, and that gave us the opportunity to basically speak to the applicant, which I hadn't done before, and just urge them to make some more changes, which they have. I think the changes have made a difference in the critical area of the shadow, which is the shadow that's cast to the rear of the adjoining property where their main living areas are. I've been in that house when it was owned by the previous owners. It has a lot of north-facing windows. It relies on those fairly extensively because it covers a lot of the block. So I can understand that overshadowing reduction is certainly going to be welcome by the neighbour to the south. They're still not happy. They would prefer it complied to 25%, which, I guess is most people's position. But when we get to look at these things, we not only look at the 25%, but we also look at where the shadow is. So the 25% is just a measure to say that's pretty well an as of right. And if you go over that, then we start looking at the location of the shadow. The bulk of the biggest shadow is falling over the front of the adjoining property, over their garage, over their roof, and all of the effort has gone into setting back the second story and setting back the third story from the southern boundary quite significantly, a lot more than a lot of other applicants have done in the past, and to really try and achieve the right outcome. So the revised drawings haven't been fully assessed by the officers, but they have looked at them to the extent of the overshadowing and what the changes are, and they've noted that, and I have gone to the effort to note that to my colleagues as well. If it was referred back to committee, we wouldn't be in a better position to make a decision because we wouldn't have any new information from the staff anyway on that matter. We might have more time to discuss it, but we've got time tonight to do that as well. So I would ask that when I put my amendment up that you support it. So I'll move that amendment now, if that's okay, Madam Mayor.
Yep, and I'll grab a seconder for that amendment. Yep, Councillor Jones.
So just to speak to the amendment briefly, the officers essentially advised that if I simply change the date on the first part of the condition, that would simply then refer to the new drawings. So that's easy enough. And the second part, again, written by the officers from the agenda, is to just ensure that when it comes back, that they can very accurately check the overshadowing meets what it's saying it's achieving, which is the 28%. So I'll put those to you. And
can I maybe just get a comment from the director in terms of, I'm assuming you've been involved in drafting this, and this would sort of align with, well, perhaps the director can comment on the view on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have, as Councillor Sullivan noted, we haven't had a chance to do a full assessment. I think in summary, we can confirm there's an improvement in terms of the overshadowing on the southern side by fundamentally changing the roof form. It does improve the shadow. There have been some other changes that we've noted that we haven't done a full assessment on, including an increased height of wall on the north side. There's also, I cannot explain the reason why the open terrace has increased in width. I'm not sure what that has to do with the shadow, so we'd need to have a look at that. And also the window on the back elevation on page 10 of the additional information, additional documents, has centralized the window, and that means that the cone of vision to the neighbours has moved closer. So we'd need to have potentially look at that, or council may decide that that is satisfactory.
So if this amendment were supported, it would effectively give you guidance for a delegated decision on those other items as well?
Not as it's currently worded. We would be checking, Councillor Sullivan, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I understand the authority would be to just double check on the shadow diagram. And I think if it goes through as it is, the other changes on the plans highlighted with yellow would essentially be approved tonight.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Councillors on the amendment. Councillor Groom.
I guess I wanted to follow that line of questioning, if I may. So if the amendment referenced other compliance issues, could we capture that, or does it need to go back? Okay.
Through the chair, I believe it would be discretionary, so we'd probably need to bring it back to committee anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Pemberton.
Interesting. Look, I don't have strong feelings about this as yet, and I do look to the committee members of planning to give guidance in terms of the discussions that have taken place so far, as well as what's being presented before us. But I do have concerns about process, just in terms of being able to really fully understand and consider what's being put before us. I do appreciate that the revised plans were sent around on Monday afternoon along with the additional documents. If the members of the planning committee feel confident based on their previous discussions and considerations that this is a good way forward, then I'm happy to support that. But without that assurance, I think it's better that we go back to a bit more of a process.
Thanks, Councillor Pemberton. So there's a call to action for members of the planning committee. Councillor Groom.
Yeah, so I was one of the members who voted in favour of this. The issue that we were really looking at was whether the amendments that were put in front of committee stop the solar penetration of some particular north-facing windows, into the living area of that house, and the revised diagrams we were given suggested that those windows would still get full winter sun access. Some of the adjacent the adjacent courtyard would not at that peak time, but the windows would. And one of my considerations in reaching a decision was this awful one that we use, which is what could someone do there? Because what we're really debating about is this roof terrace that kind of pushes the envelope of the building. where someone could build a 2-story development there to the R codes and probably get a worse overshadowing outcome, which is kind of where I got to in my decision making, was what's deemed to comply in that way, noting that those provisions around protection of north sun is one that I often go after. But in this circumstance, I thought the amendment did enough to get that outcome, which was why I voted in favour. I applaud Councillor Sullivan for getting an even better result, going that step further. And I was quite supportive of this amendment, but I hadn't understood that there were other minor changes, which may not be quite minor, that had been made on the way through. So yeah, I'm now a bit not quite sure what to do. I would probably support the plans as originally amended, or trying to get my head around what these other changes are now.
Yeah, I think that's probably well articulated, the concern. Councillor Mofflin.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I most probably share the same sentiment as Councillor Groom and Pemberton. And yeah, reading this initially prior to coming to the meeting, I was supportive. I would have most probably supported the application in the first instance. But considering that there are a handful of other changes, I don't feel it's my role to assess what the impact of those changes are. It's for us to receive advice around that, and for then for us to assess what that advice is saying and make a call on that. So I'm most probably leaning to not support the amendment and see how it plays out from there.
Councillor Jones.
A question to the director. The planning committee is next Wednesday. If would it be possible, if it was referred to that meeting, for the officer to look at those other changes? I think we're all happy with the overshadowing aspect, and I would have thought the other items you've mentioned are relatively minor and could be assessed by then. The issue would be whether it can get out in the agenda by Friday, but could I just get a response to that?
Absolutely, through the chair. The agenda's now finalised. That's going out either tonight or tomorrow. We could still endeavour to do some extra work and bring that to committee. Given the time constraint, we would do whatever we could, but it wouldn't be out with the main agenda. But there's always time to do some extra work.
Would that come as a late item? Then it could be added?
It would have to come as a late item.
Please do.
So if this was referred back to committee, the original recommendation from officers would still be on the table, in addition to whatever additional comment or further input officers could provide on the amended plans of the 14th. Is that right? So the committee could potentially sign off on the latest, the plans that have been assessed. I'm just saying there could be approval next week.
Yeah, for the original thing that went to committee, or there could be an amendment at committee with officer advice to approve the plans of the 14th, including that condition 6. Councillor Groom. Can you turn your microphone on? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, which probably answers what we should do with this. But to the director, so my reading of the amended plans for the 3rd floor and the elevations that you've referred to with the central window is that they're not consistent. So that central window I can't see on the amended plans.
Through the chair, that is correct. I've actually put some page numbering on here, and in the additional documents, it's page 10. You'll see that the window has been centralised under the new eaves, which makes architectural sense to straighten that up. But of course, it has moved that whole window further to the neighbour. So we would need to have an assessment of that if there was any overshadowing, or as I said, you could deem that is satisfactory.
I can't see where it's moved on the plans though, so that's an alarm bell.
So look on page 10. The top diagram on page 10 shows the new proposed window location, and on page
An elevation, but not plans.
You'd have to perhaps refer back to the meeting attachments. Alternatively, probably the easiest way to see it is on page 8 of the additional documents. Top of the page there, it shows the improvement to the shadow line, and in a very grey line, you can see the original window, which basically went to the corner, and so it's moved. I'm guessing around 800 mil.
I can see that. My question is, I can't see it on the plans, so they
The,
suggest they're
the
inconsistent.
latest submitted plans don't show that change.
No, that's my
Sorry.
That's my point. Yeah.
We've completely lost me in that conversation, which I guess is leaning towards the let's go to planning with officer advice. But we're on the amendment, so anything further on the amendment, or Councillor Sullivan to close, and possibly to address what, I think Councillor Pemberton's point might have been that if we were to accept the amendment now, that would then be what was being considered by planning if this was referred, or if someone was to move a referral motion. I'm not quite sure procedurally. I might even need to get advice on that. If we were to accept the amendment, then what would go to planning committee as a referral? Yeah, so that would effectively take off the table the original thing that went to planning committee earlier on this month. So I'm just trying to follow the bouncing ball here and hopefully take the audience with us. Councillor Sullivan, did you want to close?
Thank you. I acknowledge, in hindsight, what Councillor Groom has pointed out. I think that could easily be. I'll first explain the situation that the applicant found themselves in terms of trying to modify the drawings. Their designer was away for school holidays, so the extent of capacity to get modified drawings in time was not to their liking, not great, and so they did the best they could, and obviously the plan, as you correctly say, hasn't had the window modified. Having said that, a very easy solution to that would be in condition 3 to simply refer. It talks about the new open terrace. You would simply refer to the covered terrace and open terrace in 3, and that would handle all issues of overlooking from both the outdoor balcony but also the rear window. So I would be more than happy to move that as a minor amendment after this amendment, because that would absolutely cover any concern about the window on the east. You are correct, the window originally was designed, as you can see on the drawings, to exactly be positioned to the 6 metre cone of vision for a living area, and it has moved slightly to the north, meaning that it breaches that. But if you look at the drawing for the bedroom window below, they have a proposal for a screen in exactly the same scenario that fins out from the window, and I'm sure they could do that in the upper level window to achieve the exact same outcome and aesthetic. So as I said, I'm happy to move that as an amendment after this amendment if this one happens to get up. I'm just concerned that the applicant, I think this would have been approved at committee if I hadn't spoken up. The applicant has made a really good effort to come back with an improved proposal, as Councillor Groom herself acknowledged, in terms of the overshadowing, and it'd be disappointing if we put it into another almost endless process back into committee, and who knows where to from there. So it was lodged more than 10 days ago, so it has had an opportunity in theory to be assessed, and hasn't, so I'm not sure what the week between now and the committee is going to offer in terms of a significant further assessment. So I almost feel now sorry for the applicant that I've asked them to make these changes, because it seems the council might end up making it actually a harder process than it really needed to be.
All right, now before we vote, I just do want to summarise where we are procedurally so that everyone's very clear on where to from here in terms of the decision-making process. So, and I'm sort of looking left and right to the director and to the manager governance and CEO to say, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if we were to support the amendment, that would either stand tonight and leave to the future, or complaints, or I don't know what the aspects that haven't necessarily been assessed at this stage. If we were to support the amendment and refer it back to planning, that would at least give a week for assessment as a late item, but assessed based on the drawings that are approved tonight, and some notice to the neighbours that this is, I suppose, having some other consequences that they may be aware of. If we were to not support the amendment, we would be back to the committee recommendation that was considered and not supported the officer's recommendation that was considered and not supported at the last committee meeting, which got us to here. So I feel like those are probably the three options, unless anyone else wants to. Oh, well, the motion was lost, so it's, yeah, okay. All right, so hopefully that assists you. Yeah, Councillor Jones. Is it a question that you wanted to ask, Councillor Jones? Yeah, no, I was asking to the officers, but if Councillor Jones has a question, I'm happy to answer it.
Well, I think if there's a mind to refer it to the committee, it's better just to send this whole thing to the committee with both options in there, and then let the officers do the work. I think to rule out an option and then send something else to committee, which then the committee doesn't like, then we've got nothing.
Yeah. So how would we do that exactly? So just refer it at this stage before.
You'd have to do that before the amendment's voted on.
Okay. So if someone was moving a procedural motion, now would be the time to do it. Okay. So Councillor Pemberton wants to move a procedural motion to refer it to committee. And just to explain to the gallery, this is leaving both sets of plans on the table. That's why we do it this way, so that there is still that room to consider once the officers have had a chance to assess the plans. So the planning committee, which is, I believe, next week, would have both on the table. So you've moved a referral motion. Do we need a seconder?
Madam Chair, point of order. I mean, actually, Councillor Sullivan has actually closed the debate on the amendment, so strictly speaking, we should have gone straight to the vote on it. So there is no capacity to actually now refer it on.
Okay, I can either overrule, or I can. What's the other thing I can? But what we will have once the amendment goes through is the lack of ability to go back to the original plans, is what I'm understanding. So that's what I just want to get advice on, is do the original plans then go off the table if, for example, officers were to come to the committee next week and say this has horrible unintended consequences because we've changed the overshadowing? I don't think that's going to happen, by the way, but I just want to understand that that's procedurally where we would be at.
Through the chair, if you do need to vote on the amendment now. I think if you then move, if it's lost and you move to a deferral, then you need to leave it to officers to do the assessment and come back with a recommendation. I don't think we should presuppose what the recommendation is going to be.
Okay. So a loss of the amendment now would mean that then in a week's time it would come to planning with officers having done some work to assess it as a late item. No, well, we haven't moved a referral because we've been told that we need to vote on the amendment first. So we're going to put the amendment to a vote, and then any discussion or referral can take place after that. So I'm going to put the amendment to a vote. Yeah. Please ask a procedural question, Councillor Pemberton. This is fun.
Can Councillor Sullivan put his amendment at committee?
Yes. He'd have to withdraw it now, would he? No. No, it's closed. So it has to go to a vote now, but if he were to move the same amendment at committee, well, that would not be a problem, would it?
You'll probably find the officers will put a recommendation to you at committee and you won't need an amendment.
Sounds like a good outcome. Cool. All right. Councillor Lawver, your light went on, then your light went off again. Are you good? Okay. So I'm going to put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour of the amendment? All right. So 2, and all those against? So the amendment is lost. Please do not read that as we didn't like the reduction in overshadowing. This is a procedural loss, if you like. So back on the item as amended, Councillor Pemberton. So you're moving a, hang on, Councillor Groom, actually put a light on before you. So before I go to you, I'm going to go to Councillor Groom.
Yeah, I'm keen to vote on the proposal as it stands. I mean, it's reduced the shadowing impacts on the building. You know, it's made
so you're
reasonable things. It was voted closely at committee, as Councillor Sullivan said. He convinced a lot of people we could do better who may have considered otherwise. So, you know, I'm wondering why we're not voting on it.
Yeah.
Because
so
it's already an amendment of the original proposal to achieve the outcome we asked to be achieved.
So you're suggesting you would like a vote tonight on the plans submitted on the 3rd of April, or plans dated 3rd of April as per the agenda?
Well, I accept that some of my colleagues may choose to defer it, but I am
Advocating.
putting the case that council consider what's in front of them and the extent to which it reduces the impact, and as I previously said, that it's actually not a larger impact than we have to constantly approve because something complies with the R codes.
Cool.
Just for clarity, so the original committee recommendation is what's being is on the table at the moment,
and will be what goes to planning if it were referred. Yeah, correct. So on the officer's recommendation tonight, following on from Councillor Grooms, is there anything further? Councillor Archibald, I've seen your light going on and off a couple of times as well. May have been a procedural thing rather than anything else. Yep. Look, I can see Councillor Groom's argument, but I also really want to applaud people who engage with the process and with, feedback from the committee. The only issue here is because it's of one particular piece of feedback being taken on board, there is some concern around the table, I think, about some unintended consequences on the other borders that we want planning advice on before we make a decision. Given that planning committee's in a week, personally, I would be supportive of a referral if someone wanted to move one, because I don't think, there's a huge loss at this stage in terms of time, and it allows us to follow a process whereby the neighbours can't say anything like, oh, we never knew that was changed, or gosh, there's a window there now, or that wasn't the plans that we saw. And I think that's just a fair opportunity to give the neighbours. So, Councillor Thompson?
I'll just move deferral to committee, Madam Chair.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Jones, and all those in favour. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's, and against. So that's carried. Councillor Lang, I didn't see which way you voted. I'm going to say that you voted for, and you're going to tell me if you voted against, because for. Yep, good. So that is going to Planning Committee. Planning Committee is here, same time, same place, next week, with some officer advice about whether there's any other issues that weren't kind of able to be understood before tonight. So apologies, it's taking a little bit longer, but we do not want the process to be challenged afterwards and cause all of us headaches. Okay. All right, on to the rest of the agenda. Good times. Councillor Archibald, did you want to speak at all about the FPOL item? I feel like I've seen it on agendas a few times. Did you want to introduce that or move it?
No, it was just merely brought to the council because it needs to be an approval by the council. So there was no other issue with it.
All right, so we'll move the committee recommendation. I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion on this one? Parklets? Nope, you all look very happy. Councillor Lang, I can't see any movement from you, so all those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Audit and risk, which has furnished us with most of our items tonight. Perhaps if I could just go through and understand which ones people wanted to either vote on separately or speak to. Any takers for item 1? Nobody wants to count. I was looking at you. Item 2. So we want to pull out item 2. Item 3. I'm assuming so. Item 4. Okay, so I can move 1 for item 5. Okay, I can move 1 for 5, 6, and item 7. So I can move 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7 on block. Is that correct? Yep. So Councillor Thompson seemed to want to move that, and it was seconded by Councillor Sullivan. So all those in favour. Great. So that leaves us with items 2 and 3. So I'll move the officer's recommendation for item 2, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Councillor Groom, you wish to speak on this one? And anyone else put on your light?
I do. So again, this is an item that had quite a bit of correspondence prior to the committee meeting, and at the committee meeting it was confirmed that some of the attachments were not quite the correct ones, so thanks to the officers for bringing that together, and that's why this one has come through without a decision of committee. Attachment 3, or item 3 that we're being asked to vote on is about a list of audit actions that we're being asked to mark as complete. However, several of the actions on that list are not complete, but have been consolidated as part of a larger item that is ongoing, as noted in other reports. And that's because similar themes have come up in the 2 subsequent audits. So because I was having correspondence with the officer prior to the holiday, I didn't put an amendment in. So I'm not able to vote on that 3rd dot point. So I'd either like these considered separately or consider whether we could put a minor amendment that notes that they're consolidated, because I don't believe that it's an accurate reflection for council to take that decision based on the current status.
Perhaps if you could consider what words might be suitable for a minor amendment, I'd be happy to consider adding some words there. I'll go to Councillor Busick and then maybe we can come back to that. Yeah, Councillor Busick.
Thank you. And Councillor Groom has brought up some good points. What I'd like to do is to look at some highlights of the actual audit. I think there's some really good lessons to be learnt here, and I think there's some really good findings which may be of interest to us in terms of continuous improvement. I've gone in and had a look at the financial audit results report, and I make these observations.
Councillor Busick, are you on item 2 or item 3?
3.
Well, we're on item 2.
Oh, okay.
So we might just.
I thought we. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we pulled out items 2 and 3 to debate separately. So this is item 2.
Sorry.
All right, Councillor Groom, did you want to further the idea of a minor amendment to that 3rd point?
So mine would be note the status of the audit items in attachment 3. Some of them refers to it that it has been consolidated, so that's
Yep. So if you see on page 36, there is the officer recommendation that there was a procedural motion, so that's sitting there for reference. Councillor Groom is proposing that we say note the OAG audit actions item status in attachment 3, full stop. Is that correct?
Or no, the status of OAG audit is probably easier. No?
I'm now
Okay.
confused. No, I'm trying to follow what you're saying and the CEO
Note the
saying.
status of
Yeah.
OAG audit action items detailed in attachment 3.
And then we delete as completed.
Correct.
Yep, I would support that. I think that's a good way to go. So we'll just bring that up on the screen, and so people know. So I will second that minor amendment.
Delete the as completed.
Yeah, and then we're there. All right. So once that's on the screen, is there anyone who wants to speak to that minor amendment? Councillor Vusic, did you want to speak to that?
No, I'm cool with that.
Okay. Do you want to turn your mic off? All right. So I will put that minor amendment that's on the screen that I hope Councillor Lang is seeing. Maybe, hopefully. Yes. I think that means yes, he likes it. All those in favour? Okay. So back to the item now as amended. I just would note this was a good conversation at Audit and Risk. I think it's important that we start to, really use that as a forum to consider how things are tracking, and I think we're starting to improve the reporting on that, and it's certainly something that I think if people are interested in, that's a really important forum to be at if you want to have a say in how we deal with these things. So,
I would like to acknowledge the number of items that staff have closed, and the body of work that's now being done to move on these audit items.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, all those in favour of the recommendation on the screen? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, which brings us to 3. So this is the audit of the annual financial statements and acceptance of the annual report. So I'll move the officer's recommendation. Get a seconder, Councillor Groom. Councillor Vusic, I think this was the item that you wanted to speak on.
Yeah, thank you. As I said, I've read the auditor's reports, and there's been some interesting information I'd like to share. I think there is an opportunity. I think audits are really good because it's a spot in time where you do an assessment and we can make some decisions how we're going to go moving forward. So I'm going to read it as I've drafted it. The Auditor General has always had the responsibility for the 148 local government audits, and this following information comes from this particular report. We have a statutory deadline of the 30th of September every year to submit our annual financial reports. It was just some interesting, of the 148 entities, 120 met the 30th of September deadline, 12 had extensions and met compliance, and 16 are outstanding. And I'm just using the tense used in the report. Out of the 148, the AOG completed 21 audits. 127 were completed by contractors. The entities that completed their financial statements by the 30th of September 21 had their audits completed by the 30th of December 21. 3 metro local governments are outstanding: Town of Cambridge, City of Bayswater, and the City of Fremantle. The other 13 outstanding entities are shires around WA, from Ashburton to the Murchison to Mora and down to Ravensthorpe. City of Fremantle missed the deadline of 30th of September 21, and I, as an elected member, I had access to the reports in April 2023. In my view, the city, this is once again my view, is seriously underperforming when compared to the majority of other local governments who actually complied with the Act. The AOG gives reasons for the poor quality of the 50% of the financial statements, and there are 3 basic categories. Poor record keeping practices, which delayed providing the necessary information for the audit. The second point was numerous errors in financial statements and disclosures required were not met. and experienced financial staff turnover and attrition during crucial times in the financial year, or key personnel were not available to respond to the auditors at key points as they have taken leave. In my view, these reasons apply to some degree to the City of Fremantle, especially the staff turnover, not practicing proper monthly accrual accounting, which produces financial fluctuations and errors, requiring monthly budget amendments. In my view, accuracy is a major issue. Without proper monthly accrual accounting and cash flow statements, we will continue to deal with inaccuracies worth billions and the impact that has across basic service delivery. Now, when you have a look at this report here, on page service delivery. Last year's financial budget, we only balanced it on the sale of Quarry Street, which was 4.9 million. Unless we conclude the sale of Quarry Street, we are short 4.9 million. And I'd like to just highlight three items out of the audited financial report, ended 30th of June 2021. On page 6, and once again, it's page 6. There's an item that says net increase or decrease in cash held. Financial 2022, we have a 6 million net outflow of cash. On the actual financial year 21, our figure is basically 6 million net outflow of cash. At last year's budget, we have got a 3.3 net outflow of cash. The reason why we didn't do the 6 million is basically because we've factored in the sale of Quarry Street for 4.9 million. Once again, you don't need to believe what I'm saying. This is coming out of page 6 of the audit report. On page 17, the audit report deals with property, plant and equipment. We spent in 2021 on buildings 11.2, furniture and equipment 62,000, plant and equipment 0, and work in progress 1.1 million. So basically, we can say that Civic Centre was 12.3 million, and we didn't. The report shows we did not spend anything on plant and equipment. That was 0. That's really interesting if we have got aspirations of electric vehicles, if we have got any other plant and equipment that we would like to exchange or introduce. If we go to page 26 of the annual report, it deals with investment property. Our asset portfolio is worth about 22.6 million. And this item is directly out of the report. Direct operating expenses from property that generated rental income, maintenance, and I should imagine that would include cleaning, insurance, general repairs, and so forth. At the financial 2021, we spent $11,023. In our financial 22 budget, we spent $12,300. And our actual spend in 22 was, in our budget, we had spent, put in 10,455. We should be spending about 5 to 10% of 22.6 if we are going to be on top of our maintenance. However, if we were to spend, say, $1 million a year, for example, the internal renovation of our town hall, our leisure centre, our Fremantle markets, if we were spending about $1 million a year, we wouldn't be needing millions because we haven't been spending it. So these figures are coming out of the audit. So I sometimes am bemused when there's talk of a surplus because this audit doesn't show that. There's only a surplus because projects which are promised, planned and budgeted are not being delivered. They are being held back and the monies are referred to as a surplus. This happens regularly during a financial year. The employee staff numbers are much lower than is required to support ratepayer services. The vacancies are savings and referred to as a surplus. Putting off maintenance work saves money the millions not put away comes to bite you in the long term. The council now owes maintenance of their heritage buildings in the millions of dollars. It is misleading to call these savings a surplus. This is why we cannot do anything substantial in terms of building or renovating in the city. The selling of our key income performing assets without replacing them compounds our immediate financial challenges. As South Ward, who elected me to council, I do fear for the South Beach toilets, even though there is a plan and a budget. The audited net cash outflow is $6 billion. This is not sustainable. We owe our ratepayers and residents to do better. Better would mean transitioning into proper monthly accrual accounting and cash flow statements. Anything short of proper accrual accounting, in my view, is irresponsible and a disservice to ratepayers and residents. And I just might add, as you go through with the monthly financials without proper accruals, the financial people themselves don't really know from one month to the next with any level of accuracy. And I do think this is one particular item, the financials, where we ought to be able to be signing off or voting, is this a true and accurate record? Because when we do our audits a year later or 10 months later, we're actually going through budgeting as we're going through at the moment, and there's a lot of inaccurate figures. So I do employ this council, this chamber, that we can do better. Audits are great. It just shows us what we should be doing better. And at the moment, I think we can do a hell of a lot better in our finances by adopting cash flow statements and proper accrual accounting. Thank you.
All right, there's obviously a lot of questions raised through that. I probably would like the director just to clarify a couple of points before I go to Councillor Moughlin. Is monthly accrual accounting the recommended approach for local governments?
Through the chair, we already carry out monthly accrual accounting on the relevant items, and we carry out other methods for the things that it's appropriate for. Other local governments certainly carry out accrual accounting, but we carry out the methods that are suitable for the resourcing we have internally.
Okay. Councillor Moughlin?
Thank you. I had a couple of questions to follow up on as well on some of the points that Councillor Vusic made, particularly in regards to the submission or the finalisation, and it would just be good to get a comment from staff in regards to the reasons why we might have missed a 30th of September deadline, which Councillor Vusic spoke to, and a second question around the definition of a surplus as it stands from an accounting perspective and how we manage that. That would be good to know, and then I'll make a comment.
Thank you. The director?
Through the chair, so we submitted our financial statements the Monday after, the Friday, the 30th of September, and we did actually get quite close to having the audit completed by December. I believe there were some resourcing issues that contributed to that, but there was also significant resourcing issues on the side of the OAG and Grant Thornton in completing the audit on their side as well.
Yep, and the other question was around the treatment of surpluses.
Yeah, if you like. So the definition of a surplus. So Councillor Vusic made the point that the carryover of funds shouldn't be considered a surplus, but from an accounting perspective, it would just be good to understand that.
Specifically relating to a carryover surplus, that is funds that were committed in the prior year that weren't spent and have been carried forward to the next year.
All right, thank you. Thanks for those answers.
Councillor Moughlin, did you want to carry on from there?
Thank you. Yeah, I suppose I wanted to make some comments which I shared at the Audit and Risk Committee meeting, and there was a very strong and robust discussion at that meeting, and I think really important conversations that were had there, and including the input of our independent member as part of that committee as well. So the discussion that happens around audit and risk reports and actions and findings and other bits and pieces is a strong and robust process that the committee goes through. I think really important for us to call out that the city received an unqualified audit opinion, which, you know, in lay terms means that the financial position as assessed by the auditor the report fairly represents the financial position that the city has. So I think that's a congratulations to staff that they have maintained those records accurately, and to acknowledge as well that over the last 12 months or so, and particularly that period to close out that work that was happening for last financial year, there were a number of staffing challenges to do so. And if we recall the previous finance manager working diligently and quite fastidiously, if you like, to close out that work. The one thing that I spoke to at Audit and Risk, which is of concern and maintain, and I continue to have that concern, but I think it's something the city is working on, is the control environment that we have around both IT and a few of those financial controls. There were repeat findings that were identified by the Auditor General as part of that most recent audit, and the areas in which I think we need to improve is in those areas where we're exposed, particularly around information technology. Interestingly, at Walga's Zone meeting on Monday night, it was noted that Walga are doing work, particularly around those areas, and have recently completed a survey of other local governments to provide input into a position to be able to work with the Office of Auditor General. And I think it's something that we should be actively participating in to ensure that the appropriate standard is set around IT controls, and that we are getting an improvement in the way in which we manage those IT controls as well. But yeah, from my perspective, yeah, want to applaud staff to make in regards to the unqualified audit opinion, and yeah, look forward to that being managed going forward.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin. Councillors, Councillor Archibald.
Yes, I just wanted to make a very, very small comment that the comment was made about the $4.9 million that would be raised from the sale of the Quarry Street properties. I mean, while we have properties, these would be sitting in assets, and it's my understanding that the 4.9 million was going to be, if the properties were sold and achieved that amount of money, it would be transferred to the reserve accounts. So the budget should still remain balanced one way or another. It's that those funds weren't required for operating purposes in that financial year. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just making that comment. And I just wanted to make the other comment. I mean, Councillor Vucic did raise a whole range of issues in her statements, and it would be very helpful if these were circulated prior to the meeting. And I do recall, I think at the last council meeting, asking if she could circulate the questions she'd raised at that council meeting so that we could better appreciate what issues she's raising. But I don't recall seeing it. So it would be useful if we could understand better exactly the issues that are being raised so that we can be more informed. It's difficult to work out which page each little thing is on to understand exactly what's being said. So if the 4.9 is still balancing the budget one way or another, assets or cash, then I think we're okay.
Yeah, I think that's a well-made point, and I would also reiterate that Audit and Risk Committee, which is obviously the place where this is considered prior to coming to council, is open to all councillors to attend. Did you have a question, Councillor Vucic?
Yeah, page 6 of this report. Is it true that we have a cash outflow of $6 billion? It's pretty easy to answer.
So which report were you referring to?
one here. Audited annual report.
The annual report,
It is
not
the report.
officer's report. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to answer that question, the director, if you're clear on what it is?
Through the chair, if it's reflected in the audited annual statements, then yes, that's correct.
Yep.
Well, thank you. We're 6 million down.
All right.
Thank you.
Just remind people on tone. Councillors, further discussion on the item? No. All right. I would caution that reading things in isolation might be somewhat risky. And I will close this item if there's no further comment. All right. Okay, so we'll put that one to the vote, noting also that this sets the date for the AGM as the 6th of June. All those in favour? And against? No, that's everyone, including Councillor Lang for, so that's carried. Thank you. All right, that's going to take us through to council items. Again, could I have any advice from people as to which items they might want to speak on or vote separately? So C1, nobody. 2, nobody. 3, Councillor Vusic. 4, anybody? Councillor Mofflin. So I'll move 1 and 2 on block, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. All those in favour? Yep. And I'll move the officer recommendation for item 3, seconded by someone, Councillor Mofflin. Councillor Vusic, you wanted to either speak to that or vote separately?
No. I will be very brief. I think it will be really good to tease out what a surplus is. Because if you have a look at page 78 of your agenda, we have a closing surplus of 32.81 million.
Is that all?
Okay. So estimation that it costs about $8 million a month to run the council, just to run the council. So if we had April, May, June is 8 3s are 24 million. Where is the 24 million going to come out of? Is that going to come out of the 32? I would say that's consolidated revenue.
Right, I think probably to reiterate Councillor Archibald's point, it would be great if this could be kind of given some notice of, but I'll offer the Director the opportunity to respond to what I think you're putting forward here.
Through the Mayor, I'm more than happy to take any questions you have on notice, if you can provide more information and detail on what you're asking.
Great. Okay. Councillors, any further discussion on that one? Nope. All right. I'm going to put that to a vote. All those in favour? Thanks. And that's unanimous. And the final C item, CEO Performance Review Committee. I'll move the officer's recommendation, seconded by Councillor Mofflin. Councillor Mofflin.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out to fellow elected members, as part of the CEO review process, that the committee recommended that we continue with price consulting as part of that CEO performance review process, and we should be expecting to see in the coming sort of 6 weeks or so that survey similar to what we completed last year to provide feedback on the CEO's performance. So I would encourage everyone around the table to take the time to do that and to do it well and provide feedback that's required to help the CEO with their performance and for us to understand how they're tracking against our expectations. And I'd also encourage those who may not have had the opportunity to read the update the CEO provides as part of that performance review committee.
Thank you. Well said. I'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you. I have have no motions of which previous notice has been given, no urgent business, no late items, no confidential business. So that brings us to a close of the meeting at